All right, guys, so today in front of me from the King of Rock himself, I bring to you Elvis Whiskey and Elvis Rye. So Grain and Barrel Spirits collaborated with Elvis Presley Enterprises, and boom, we have Elvis Whiskey. All right, guys, so I have two different expressions here in front of me. This one is a straight Tennessee whiskey. It is called Tiger Man. It's believed that either his dad or a fan were one of the first ones to call him Tiger Man or King of the Jungle. And he actually played the song Tiger Man live in 1969 and continued to play it throughout the rest of his career. The straight rye whiskey is called the King, obviously Elvis being hailed the king of rock and roll. And John Lennon once actually said that nothing affected me more than Elvis. Without Elvis, there would be no Beatles. So I'm actually really excited to get into these and see what they're all about, guys. So without further ado, let's go. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and get started with the straight Tennessee whiskey, a.k.a. Tiger Man. This one is aged for at least 2.5 years. The MSRP on this guy is $50. Mash bill on this one is 80% corn, 10% rye, 10% malted barley. Let's go ahead and get into the nose on this one. Yeah, I'm picking up like a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of caramel in there, but the main thing I'm really picking up right now is like this sweet, like cream corn, like cream of corn. I do actually pick up some red fruits in there a little bit. It's almost like a red apple maybe. Yeah, I mean the nose is kind of muted. Like there's not like anything that's really standing out besides that corn. Like I said, there is like a little bit of like an apple, like a red fruit, like a influence in there, I mean, if you will, and a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of caramel, but that sweet corn, cream of corn is really what's popping out at me right now on the nose. All right, guys, let's get in the palate. Cheers. So the palate is definitely a little bit better than the nose. It tastes a little bit older than 2.5 years. You get some of the vanillas, the caramels, a lot of sweetness kind of up front. And then that corn influence just kind of like takes over the middle into the back of the palate. Not really picking up any of those red fruits really on the palate like I did on the nose. Finish is pretty short. It's almost like a little bit watery kind of on the palate. I mean, I say I like that sweetness that's kind of up front, like right into the front into the middle, where that like sweet corn kind of takes over, and then into the back, it just kind of it does start to fall flat a little bit. Let's get into the second sip. All right, so that sip actually changed a little bit. So front of the palate still some vanillas, the caramels. Some of that like really is like sweet corn kind of sitting there on the middle of the palate. I do get a little bit of like some citrus, some lemon that sits there on the sides of the palate. And going down into the finish, it's very odd, but I do pick up like this almost like a ripe banana note there, like on the back of the palate going into the finish. Not picking up any kind of like rye spices or anything like that. It's definitely corn dominated. Some of that sweet corn on the middle of the palate there. It's a very interesting banana note there at the on the back and into the finish. I wasn't expecting that at all. That little bit of lemon there on the sides of the palate. But some of the flavors there are kind of just like they're kind of muted. Like I said, that corn is definitely that corn definitely takes over on the center there. Let's get the last sip, guys. Cheers. Yeah, so I mean that sip actually changed a little bit too. So front of the palate, again that caramel, vanilla, and then right into the middle of the palate now, where that sweet corn was, I get like an almond, and like after the kind of the finish goes down. It's like this almond note that kind of sits there with that corn. A little bit of lemon there on the sides of the palate. Then into the back, is, like I said, that like the ripe banana note is actually still there. I'm very surprised by that. It's probably my favorite part of the palate is actually that banana. Again, it is kind of watery, and again, a lot of the flavors do kind of fall flat. Nothing really flows all the way through into the finish. It is a short finish, but not too bad of a straight Tennessee whiskey here. So, I mean, it could be better. It could have been a little higher proof that they may have did something with the flavors as well. But for being aged, at least 2.5 years, pretty decent straight Tennessee whiskey here. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and get into the straight rye whiskey, a.k.a. the King. This one is aged for at least 3 years. It is 95.5, so it is an MGP rye. MSRP on this guy is $50 as well. Let's go ahead and get into the nose on this one. Oh, I mean, first thing I get is it's dill. I get some dill there on the nose. Definitely standing out. A little bit of like some star anise in there as well. And there's it's like a little bit of like a wintergreen note in there. With that dill and that star anise. Yeah, it's like a stick of like wintergreen gum. I do get like a little bit of sweetness from a vanilla in there. I'm not picking up really anything else besides, like I said, that dill was one of the first things I got. That star anise as well. And then that wintergreen now is actually standing out a little bit more than everything else. A little earthy there on the nose. Interesting note, guys. Let's get a palate. Cheers. So again, on this one, I actually like the palate a lot more than I like the nose. Don't get me wrong, the nose on this one was actually interesting. Dill, star anise, and then a little bit of like wintergreen. But on the palate on this one, it comes off very sweet. I do get a little bit of dill there on the middle of the palate. Rye spices they're not super heavy. I actually pick up a little bit of the graininess from the rye. Finish on this one is short as well. It drinks its proof, 90 proof. But again, this one it tastes like it's a little bit older than 3 years. I know it's aged for a minimum of 3 years, but it could get away with maybe 4 or 5 years on the palate. Let's get into the second sip. So that sip changed a little bit. So I got a lot of like fruity notes there on the front of the palate. Rye spices still there. Again, it's not super spicy, but you do get that rye spice flavor that sits on the center of the palate there, along with some of that dill. And then into the finish, I do get like a little bit of a sweet oak that kind of flows there with some like black pepper. Very interesting on the palate. Again, this one was kind of like the straight Tennessee whiskey, where it's a little bit watery there on the palate. Again, short finish. Let's get the last sip, guys. Cheers. Yeah, so again, there's a little bit of that sweetness there on the front of the palate. Again, some of that dill there sitting on the center of the palate with some of that the rye spice, some of those grains. It drinks older than 3 years. It drinks its proof. But then it's the flavors go away so quick, along with that finish. Kind of that sweet oak and pepper that kind of that flow through into the back of the palate into the finish. Yeah, it's for being at least 3 years old, 90 proof. It definitely has some interesting notes. Again, the nose had that wintergreen, which was really nice, along with that that dill and that star anise. Then the palate, I mean, that there was flavors there, but they're almost like muted. Like nothing really stood out. Nothing really stood out like amongst those flavors. They were just kind of like there, and then they just kind of vanished, and then went to a really short finish. But pretty decent. Pretty decent straight rye whiskey here. So I thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. I want to say a big thank you over to the team at Grain & Barrel Spirits for supplying me with these bottles here to review on the channel. Some surprises here with these guys being aged, fairly young. This straight Tennessee whiskey, again, being aged 2.5 years. One of the surprises for me on this one was picking up that ripe banana note on the palate. I wasn't expecting that at all. And, the straight rye whiskey being aged for at least 3 years. One of the things I liked about the nose on that one was that star anise, that dill, and then a little bit of that wintergreen, which was quite surprising. I don't really get a lot of that wintergreen on anything, but the combination of the three made for a very nice nose. Again, I mean, decent stuff here from Grain & Barrel Spirits. Again, it's nothing that's going to wow you. At the $50 price point, I mean, I may pick the rye over the straight Tennessee whiskey. If I were to spend the $50 on these, it would probably be the rye. But pretty decent stuff here from Grain & Barrel Spirits, guys. So if you're looking for more reviews like this, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. And until next time, guys, stay dusty.